Savannah Walker wasn't just an influencer, she was a movement. A rising star in the world of social media, she had become synonymous with body positivity. With millions of followers across platforms like Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, her face had appeared on countless posts promoting self-love, confidence, and inclusivity. To her growing fan base, she represented strength, a woman who had battled her insecurities and emerged victorious. Her online persona was carefully curated, radiant photos, inspirational captions, and the occasional no-makeup selfie that proved she was just like her followers, human, imperfect, and learning every day. But the core of Savannah's brand was rooted in one powerful message: all bodies are beautiful. Whether you were a size 2 or a size 22, her message was clear: love yourself as you are. She had come a long way from her humble beginnings. Growing up, Savannah was constantly bombarded with the unrealistic standards of beauty that social media and magazines promoted. As a teenager, she struggled with her weight, frequently comparing herself to the flawless influencers she followed. Her own body didn't fit the mold, and for years, she wrestled with self-doubt and insecurity. It was only after a transformative journey of self-acceptance that Savannah decided to use her platform to redefine beauty standards. The moment Savannah started sharing her journey, the response was overwhelming. Her audience, primarily made up of young women, gravitated toward her authenticity. She was a voice for the voiceless, a beacon of hope for those who felt overlooked in the beauty industry. Savannah's rise was swift. Her followers loved her vulnerability. She didn't just preach positivity, she lived it. She posted photos and videos showing her body in all its natural forms: stretch marks, cellulite, and the occasional pimple. She made it clear that the real, unfiltered version of herself was the most beautiful. Brands took notice, too. Soon, Savannah was collaborating with major companies that promoted body-inclusive campaigns. She appeared in commercials, attended red carpet events, and even launched her own line of inclusive fitness apparel. The industry hailed her as a trailblazer, someone who was breaking barriers and paving the way for a more diverse representation of beauty. But with fame came expectations. Savannah's followers looked to her for guidance, for inspiration. They expected her to always champion body positivity, to constantly reinforce the idea that no one should be ashamed of their bodies. She had become an icon, a symbol of resistance against the narrow beauty ideals that had long dominated social media. However, the pressure to maintain this flawless image of confidence began to take its toll. As much as she championed self-love, Savannah sometimes felt the weight of perfectionism bearing down on her. Was she allowed to struggle? Was it possible to encourage others to love their bodies while still working on her own self-acceptance? These questions gnawed at her, but Savannah pushed them aside, reminding herself that the world was watching. The idea of being seen as anything less than perfect wasn't an option, not with so many eyes fixed on her. In her mind, the journey of body positivity was about more than just physical appearance, it was about embracing one's true self. But as the world of influencers grew more complex, Savannah's path would soon be challenged in ways she never anticipated. Savannah Walker's day began the same way: a quick check of her phone. Notifications flooded in, comments, likes, and messages from followers thanking her for inspiring them. Social media wasn't just Savannah's job, it was her mission to change how the world viewed beauty. Her posts focused on one core message: body positivity was not about conforming to any standard, but about loving yourself in all forms. Savannah's Instagram feed was filled with everything: unfiltered selfies, workout photos, and candid moments that showed her in both her most polished and most vulnerable states. Her captions echoed empowerment, often stating that every body, no matter its shape or size, deserved love and respect. She believed that body positivity should not only be inclusive but diverse. She proudly showcased her own curves, stretch marks, and imperfections, setting herself apart from the perfect images of influencers that often dominated the platform. But Savannah didn't just focus on her own journey. She used her platform to amplify the voices of others, featuring stories from women of various sizes, ethnicities, and backgrounds. Through her #RealBodiesRealStories series, she invited followers to share their personal experiences with body image, encouraging a conversation about what it truly meant to love your body. She made sure to show that there was no one correct way to be beautiful. On YouTube, Savannah expanded her message. Her weekly videos ranged from discussions on self-esteem to interviews with body-positive activists. The more she shared, the more her fanbase grew. She received messages from people who felt empowered by her content, who thanked her for helping them feel seen in a world that often celebrated only a narrow definition of beauty. Savannah had become a symbol of hope, a shining example of how authenticity could break barriers. However, her rise was not without its challenges. As her platform grew, so did the criticism. Some followers began to point out that Savannah's brand of body positivity seemed to exclude certain body types. Critics argued that, while she promoted self-love, she was still endorsing the idea of a desirable body type, curvy, but not too large. To some, it felt like there was still a standard to meet, just a different one than what society typically demanded. Others accused her of hypocrisy. Despite her body-positive messages, Savannah worked with fitness and wellness brands that some felt promoted weight loss under the guise of health. Isn't that just diet culture? They questioned. How can you preach body love and still push products that suggest you need to change your body? The question stung, and Savannah found herself torn. She had always believed in promoting self-love, but the criticism made her wonder if her own version of body positivity was truly inclusive. Was she, perhaps unintentionally, excluding those who didn't fit the mold she had celebrated so loudly? The criticism forced Savannah to reflect on how body positivity was perceived by those who felt unseen in the movement. Despite the backlash, Savannah remained committed to her cause. But as the voices of dissent grew louder, the divide between her supporters and critics became more pronounced. For Savannah, this was just the beginning of a much deeper journey, one that would challenge her understanding of inclusivity and force her to reconsider what it truly meant to promote self-love for all. It was a typical Friday when Savannah Walker posted a seemingly harmless photo. The caption read, "Loving yourself means embracing every curve, every flaw, every inch of your body. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. #LoveYourself #curvyandproud." The image showed her posing in a form-fitting dress that highlighted her curves, a big smile on her face. She was radiating confidence, exactly the kind of content her followers loved. But that photo would quickly become the catalyst for a controversy that she hadn't anticipated. As the post gained traction, the backlash began to roll in. It wasn't long before a thread of comments started to grow, many accusing her of promoting a version of body positivity that only embraced certain body types. Some of her slimmer followers felt alienated by the message. "What about those of us who don't have curves?" one comment read, "You're telling us we're not good enough." Others expressed similar frustrations, feeling that Savannah's message, while empowering for many, overlooked those who didn't fit her idealized version of beauty. One comment in particular caught fire: "You can't be body positive and still shame thinner bodies. Your curves are celebrated, but what about the rest of us?" #skinny shaming. The accusation hit Savannah hard. She never intended to exclude anyone, but the message in her post clearly didn't land the way she had hoped. It was an offhand remark about embracing every curve that felt dismissive to some of her audience. To them, it sounded like she was subtly implying that only larger bodies were worth celebrating. At first, Savannah didn't know how to respond. The comments poured in from both sides, some defending her, others condemning her for perpetuating a toxic narrative. Her loyal followers were quick to jump in, assuring others that the post wasn't meant to hurt anyone. "She's just promoting self-love for all bodies, even curvy ones," they argued. But the damage was done, and the critics were growing louder. For Savannah, the backlash felt like a betrayal. She had always tried to be inclusive, to uplift everyone, regardless of size. But now, her message seemed to be unintentionally pitting one body type against another. She had always been clear that body positivity was about embracing all forms of beauty, but her latest post seemed to undermine that ideal. The controversy spread beyond Instagram. Influencers who had once praised Savannah began to distance themselves. Some even called out her narrow view of body positivity, accusing her of not truly understanding the complexity of the movement. The term skinny shaming began to trend on social media, and Savannah found herself at the center of a firestorm. As the day went on, Savannah debated whether to delete the post. But she couldn't. It was a part of her, a message she believed in. Yet, in the wake of the storm, she realized that body positivity was far more nuanced than she had initially understood. She was no longer just an advocate for curvy women, she had to be an advocate for all women, including those who felt overlooked or criticized for their size, whether big or small. Savannah's supporters remained loyal, but the criticism was impossible to ignore. She couldn't help but wonder, had she just become another part of the problem? Savannah Walker had never experienced a backlash like this. Overnight, the support she had spent years cultivating seemed to evaporate. The post that had once seemed like a simple expression of self-love was now a battleground. Critics flooded her comments, accusing her of hypocrisy and perpetuating the very same toxic standards she had spent her career fighting against. One comment, from a former follower, said it all: "I thought you were about body positivity for everyone. Instead, you're just using your platform to promote one version of beauty. Not cool, Savannah." The comment quickly gained traction, receiving hundreds of likes and shares. It wasn't just a single isolated voice, thousands of others echoed similar sentiments. Women who had once felt seen and heard on Savannah's page were now feeling excluded, misunderstood, and betrayed. The backlash didn't stop at Instagram. Twitter became a hotbed for criticism. Influencers, activists, and even fans of Savannah's were quick to call out her post for what they saw as skinny shaming. One Twitter user posted, "It's shocking to see a body positivity influencer promote a message that excludes thinner bodies. Is this what we've come to? I'm done with that, Savannah Walker." The hashtag skinny shaming trended for hours, with thousands of tweets using it to express their disappointment in Savannah's stance. As the backlash continued, the unfollows started. Savannah's follower count began to drop, a painful reminder of how quickly her carefully built community was unraveling. What had once been an overwhelmingly positive platform now felt toxic, as if every post she made was under scrutiny. Sponsors, too, began to pull away. Companies that had previously partnered with her for body-positive campaigns started distancing themselves, fearing the negative association with the controversy. Public accusations of hypocrisy intensified. Critics pointed out that Savannah's message seemed only to uplift certain bodies, leaving out women who were naturally thin or struggling with different kinds of body image issues. How can she call herself body positive and still only promote one specific look? One blogger wrote. This isn't body positivity, it's body elitism. The accusations were harsh, and Savannah found herself scrambling to keep her brand intact. What hurt the most was how her message of body positivity, a message she had spent so long developing, was being weaponized against her. Instead of uniting women under the banner of self-love, her words were now used to divide. Her post was interpreted as a personal attack on those who didn't meet her perceived standard of beauty. The very movement she championed, promoting diversity in body types, had become the very thing that led to her downfall. Savannah attempted to explain herself, posting a video where she apologized, stating that she had never meant to exclude anyone. "I understand now that my words unintentionally hurt some of you, and I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaking. But the apology was met with mixed responses. Some accepted it, appreciating her effort to own up to her mistake, while others dismissed it as too little, too late. The damage was done, and Savannah realized that the road ahead would not be as simple as posting another heartfelt message. Her influence, once a beacon of inclusivity, now felt tainted, and the public was holding her accountable. In her pursuit of promoting body love, she had learned just how complicated the journey to true inclusivity could be. The weight of the backlash bore down on Savannah Walker like a suffocating blanket. Every time she opened her phone, she was met with more criticism, comments accusing her of hypocrisy, calls for accountability, and a growing sense of isolation. The public fallout was one thing, but the private toll was far worse. Savannah had always prided herself on being an advocate for inclusivity, but now, she wasn't sure if she had just alienated a part of her community that needed her the most. In the quiet of her apartment, Savannah stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman she saw staring back at her was no longer the confident body positivity champion she had been just days before. Her reputation was tarnished, and she couldn't escape the nagging feeling that her message had been distorted beyond repair. The loss of sponsorships hit her hard. Brands that had once lined up to partner with her were now pulling away, unwilling to risk further damage to their own image. Savannah had worked tirelessly to build her partnerships, aligning herself with companies that promoted self-love and body acceptance. But now, those same companies were turning their backs. It felt like a betrayal, but she also knew that their decisions were not entirely unexpected. She had, after all, given them a reason to distance themselves. As her follower count dropped, the comments grew more venomous. "I thought you were supposed to be about all bodies," one message read. "I guess if you're not curvy, you don't count." Savannah felt her stomach churn every time she read the posts. She had never meant to hurt anyone, but the damage was done. The online space that had once felt like her sanctuary was now a battlefield, and she was its unwilling target. One evening, after scrolling through her feed for hours, Savannah called her friend Maya. Maya had been with her since the early days of her career, when Savannah was still a small-time influencer struggling to find her voice. Maya had always been a steady source of support, and Savannah needed that grounding now more than ever. "Save, I get why you're upset," Maya said, her voice soft but firm. "But you can't internalize all of this. You're human, and you made a mistake. The question is, how do you move forward?" Savannah sighed. "But I've let so many people down. I've spent all this time talking about how everyone should love their bodies, but I excluded a whole group of people without even realizing it. I feel like I failed." Maya paused. "You didn't fail. You're learning. We all make mistakes. You're just in a really public space where everyone gets to see it. And maybe that's the lesson here. You can't just talk the talk, you need to walk the walk, even when it's uncomfortable." The conversation gave Savannah some clarity, but it didn't take away the guilt. Maya was right, of course. She had always been quick to offer advice to others, to tell them to embrace their imperfections and love their bodies. But now, she was the one who needed to take her own advice. The next day, Savannah met with her manager, Liam, to discuss the fallout. He had always been there to steer her through tricky situations, but this was different. "You've got to make a statement, Savannah," Liam said, looking at her with concern. "But it's not just about apologizing. You need to show that you understand why this happened. This is bigger than you now." Savannah nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. She hadn't just let herself down, she had let her followers down. It wasn't enough to simply say sorry. She needed to show that she was truly committed to making things right. The journey ahead would be a long one, filled with uncomfortable conversations and painful reflections. But Savannah knew one thing for sure: she had to face the consequences of her actions if she ever hoped to rebuild the trust she had lost. The day Savannah Walker posted her apology, she knew it was only the beginning. She stood in front of her phone, staring at the camera, unsure of what exactly to say. But she had to say something, her followers deserved that much. "Hey everyone," she began, her voice shaky. "I want to start by saying I'm truly sorry. I've spent so much time talking about body positivity, but I failed to include everyone in that conversation. I've unintentionally hurt people, and that was never my intention." Her words felt heavy, but they were real. She wasn't just saying sorry for a misstep, she was acknowledging the deep misunderstanding that had unfolded. Savannah continued, trying to express what had been weighing on her heart. "I've always believed that body positivity is about loving yourself no matter your size, but I now see that it's more complex than that. It's not just about celebrating my body or the bodies I personally identify with. It's about celebrating all bodies. All shapes, all sizes. I've excluded a group of people I didn't even realize I was leaving behind, and for that, I'm deeply sorry." She paused, looking into the camera with a deep, sincere expression. "I understand now that body positivity cannot be defined by one body type or by anyone's personal standards. It's about inclusion, about lifting up everyone, no matter what their bodies look like. And I failed to do that. I will do better. I promise you." The video was met with mixed reactions. Some praised her for owning up to her mistake, appreciating the vulnerability and sincerity of her words. But others were less forgiving. "You should have known better," one follower commented. "A simple apology doesn't erase the damage." While Savannah understood the criticism, she also recognized that true change would take more than words. The realization hit her hard. She had always believed body positivity was simple: love your body, no matter its size. But now, she saw that the movement was far more layered and nuanced. It wasn't about picking sides or labeling one body type as more acceptable than another. It was about fostering a space where everyone, no matter their shape or history, could feel accepted. She had made the mistake of narrowing that definition, and now she had to widen it again. In the days following her apology, Savannah made a conscious effort to engage with those who felt excluded. She reached out to individuals in the body-positive community who had expressed their disappointment, asking them for guidance on how she could better reflect their voices. She began following creators who championed all body types, not just the ones that mirrored her own. Slowly, she worked to reframe her platform, intentionally amplifying stories of people who didn't fit the narrow ideals she had once promoted. Savannah also started to use her platform to educate herself on the broader complexities of body image. She joined webinars, read books, and listened to people whose experiences were vastly different from hers. She had always been an advocate, but now, she needed to be a student. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. Over time, she regained some of the trust she had lost, especially from those who saw the sincerity in her attempts to evolve. The apology had been a start, but it was her actions, her willingness to learn and grow, that began to heal the rift. Savannah understood that the road ahead would be long, but she was committed to the journey. She had learned that body positivity wasn't a simple message, it was a lifelong practice of inclusivity, understanding, and growth. And she was ready to embrace it fully, flaws, mistakes, and all. Savannah Walker's journey toward redemption began in the quiet moments after the apology video. The fallout from her previous misstep had been intense, but Savannah knew that regaining her audience's trust wouldn't happen overnight. She was determined to do the work, not just for her brand, but for herself and the community she had once so confidently led. Her first step was listening. Savannah reached out to body diversity advocates she admired, people whose work she had respected but never fully understood before. She sought their advice, asking how she could evolve and make her platform a true reflection of inclusivity. It was uncomfortable at first. She had spent years as the voice of body positivity, and now, she was a student, learning the nuances of a movement she thought she had mastered. One of the first people she collaborated with was Kendra Harris, a plus-size activist and advocate for all body types. Kendra's work was centered on breaking barriers for those often overlooked by mainstream beauty standards. Together, they launched a joint series called Bodies Beyond the Norm. Each episode featured women of varying sizes, shapes, and backgrounds, from petite women who often felt excluded from body-positive spaces to larger women sharing their own experiences. Savannah used her platform to amplify their voices, giving her audience a glimpse into the diversity of body narratives she had previously overlooked. Savannah's audience noticed the change. Slowly, the comments began to shift. Followers who had criticized her for being one-sided started to see that she was putting in the effort to rebuild. "I'm glad you're listening and learning," one comment read. "Thank you for showing the diversity that really matters." It wasn't just her followers who noticed, other influencers began to praise her for her humility and commitment to growth. It was a powerful reminder that authenticity was still the cornerstone of her influence. Savannah didn't stop there. She actively engaged in conversations about the complexities of body image, not shying away from tough topics. She hosted live sessions where she interviewed people with different experiences of body positivity, experiences that went beyond her own. Through these candid discussions, Savannah not only gave her audience a chance to learn alongside her, but also created a safe space for others to share their stories. Her collaborations with Kendra and other diversity advocates continued, but Savannah also introduced a new series on her Instagram called Body Stories, which showcased user-submitted content from her followers. These weren't just photos of women in swimsuits or glamorous outfits, but raw, unfiltered moments of self-love in all its forms. Some shared their journeys through weight loss or medical conditions, Others simply shared moments of self-acceptance in the face of societal pressure. As the weeks passed, Savannah's audience began to feel the shift. It wasn't just about one post or a public apology, it was about consistent, genuine efforts to understand and support body diversity. Savannah's content started to reflect her own personal growth. She no longer viewed body positivity as a one-dimensional issue. Instead, it became a journey of listening, evolving, and amplifying those who had long been left out of the conversation. Savannah knew she hadn't fixed everything. Trust, once broken, could take time to rebuild, and she was prepared for that. But what mattered now was that she was doing the hard work, not for validation, but because she truly believed in the message she had long championed. Her audience saw it too. With each new collaboration, each new conversation, Savannah reclaimed not only her brand but her place as a true advocate for all bodies. As time passed, Savannah Walker's journey of growth became more than just a redemption arc, it became a redefinition of what body positivity truly meant. She had learned the hard way that the path to inclusivity wasn't linear and that advocating for self-love required more than just celebrating one's own body. It was about embracing all bodies, all stories, and all experiences, regardless of size, shape, or societal expectations. Savannah had reshaped the conversation around body positivity by listening, truly listening, to those who had felt left out of the movement she had once led. Her work was no longer just about promoting the visibility of Phobia bodies, it was about celebrating the full spectrum of human diversity. She worked tirelessly to create a space where every individual could see themselves reflected, whether they were tall, short, plus size, thin, or somewhere in between. Savannah had learned that body positivity didn't just mean feeling comfortable in your own skin, it meant supporting others in their own journeys, no matter where they were. Her past mistakes still stung, but Savannah now saw them not as failures, but as opportunities for learning and growth. She acknowledged the challenges she faced in rebuilding her platform, but instead of shying away from them, she embraced them. She knew that the road to inclusivity wasn't easy, and there would always be work to do. The more she learned about the complexities of body image, the more she understood how many people had been hurt by movements that promised acceptance but delivered exclusion. Her evolution wasn't just reflected in her content, but in the conversations she had with her audience. Savannah had become a true ally, someone who not only spoke about self-love but practiced it, by amplifying voices that had long been silenced. She no longer viewed body positivity as a buzzword or a trend, but as a movement that required constant introspection, humility, and compassion. Through her collaborations, discussions, and personal reflection, Savannah had come to embody the very message she had once only preached. The influencer who had once been criticized for narrowing the definition of beauty was now a champion for a broader, more inclusive vision of body positivity. She didn't have all the answers, but she was committed to the process of continuous learning. She knew that the journey was far from over, but she also knew that with each step, she was making progress, not just for herself, but for the people who had once felt left behind. As Savannah looked ahead, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had moved beyond the superficial aspects of her platform and had embraced the deeper, more meaningful work of advocating for all bodies. With greater empathy, understanding, and a broader perspective, Savannah was ready to continue her mission, one that was no longer about just her, but about all of us. And in that, she found her true power.